Nate Bozalik, shalom.
Shalom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. You're here in Israel as part of a tour with the One Israel Fund. This is not your first time here since the war. You've been here so much throughout the war. Now, I know it's important for you to tell the story, to tell the truth, and we'll talk a bit about that. But why was it so important for you to be here, to experience it with us?
I think I have a deep appreciation of the Jewish story. And, history is very, very telling of where this could potentially go, this specific scenario that we're facing, the rise of anti-Semitism, the anti-Israel rhetoric that we're seeing unfold around the world. For me, I feel obligated to be a voice of reason, not just someone who speaks from a distance, but someone who actually deeply cares about what happens to the people who call this land home.
Now, is it really becoming more difficult to tell the story, to tell the truth?
I think it's become more difficult because the opposition, the opposing force of the pro-Palestinian movement has gained a lot of traction over the last 22 months. They've been completely successful at presenting their narrative, which I would argue is very much a deeply rooted lie. But the world has become attracted to the presentation of what they say is unfolding here in Israel and more specifically in Gaza. So I think the challenge now is that they've convinced a vast majority of uneducated and I would say ignorant people to support and get behind their jihadist movement.
Now, when you tell the truth, when you show the pictures, when you tell the stories, when you present the statistics even, are you able to influence? Are you able to convince?
I don't think I set out to influence. I set out to present the truth as I see it. Someone who is willing to come into the land, who's willing to have some difficult conversations and obviously say some really, really challenging things. My goal is not to change someone's mind. My goal is to give people enough information, which I believe is correct, to give them a more informed answer about where they should stand in this conflict. If I was trying to just convince people and change their minds, I think I probably would have given up a long time ago, because what we've seen over the last 22 months is sadly comfortable and easy to be anti-Semitic and to be anti-Israel in this world. I mean, we can look at the comments from the Coldplay lead singer just last night, bringing up 2 Israeli girls on stage. And when he found out they were Israeli, he said, well, it's okay that you're here because you're still a human, which is such a dehumanizing statement to make. And then he also felt obliged to also say, well, let's say hello to all the Palestinian people who are in the audience. Now, if the roles were reversed and a Palestinian group of people came up on stage, let's say 2 Palestinian girls came up on stage, would he feel obligated to say, well, it's okay, you're still a human even though you're Palestinian? No. Would he still feel obliged to say, well, hey, let's say hello to all our Israeli fans as well? I don't think so. And so what it shows is there's a real comfortable position for the world to be pro-Palestinian, and there's a real uncomfortable position to stand in, which is to say, actually, I believe in Israel's right to exist, Israel's right to have sovereignty over the land, and most importantly, I believe that Israel has a right to defend itself against radical jihadist Islamic ideologies. But that's what's uncomfortable for the world now. So why I sit in this position is because I know few people are willing to do it because of the costs that will come if you speak truth. But this has always been the way. In history, in our world, from a biblical point of view, whenever you take a strong stand that sits on a foundation of truth, you're going to have opposition from people who are liars, who are accusers, who are doing things with a wicked motivation or intention.
Now, you're explaining to me how it's happening, the ignorance, what people know, what people don't know, the hate. But after all, it's very frustrating. Do you also find yourself, sometimes, seeing the hate, seeing the lies, and, you sometimes want to just bash your head in the wall?
Yeah, for sure. Most days I wake up and I'm actually mentally and emotionally exhausted by trying to present a simple truth to a world who is ignorant and blind. But what motivates me? I see people like Eli Sharabi traveling all around the world to advocate for the release of the remaining 48 hostages who still remain in Gaza. I sit with IDF soldiers who have bravely fought in Gaza and protected the Jewish identity, and I see the strength and courage they have under fire. I've met with so many incredible people over the last 22 months, the Jewish spirit, the real Jewish spirit, which I've been amazed by. So I get courage from them, and I get disheartened by the world. And I'm in this kind of seesaw balance of life, waking up and trying to find new reasons to keep pushing.
Now, I believe that the unity that you met here in Israel at the beginning, after October 7th, was very inspiring. Do you find yourself wanting to tell the Israelis today, hold on to that unity, go back to that unity? It's not the same as what we felt at the beginning. Hold on to that. It's very important.
I often speak around the world at different Jewish events, and one of the statements I often make in my conversations and speeches with different Jewish communities who are feeling the weight of the world coming at them. I say this to them: you are a people that have been hated by all, but loved by one. And who is the one? Who's the one that actually loves them? It's Hashem. Whether the Jewish people believe in the God of the Bible or not, it is evident and clear that they have a deep relationship with Him, and He is driving the story. And this is a love story that I get to witness every single day. I mean, even the rebirth and the re-establishment of Israel in 1948 was a declaration of Hashem to the nations that my covenant to Abraham still stands. And I firmly believe in that. And maybe that's why I have more confidence than most, because even though the world wants to vilify and hate Israel and the Jewish identity, I know that the person who's going to have the ultimate final say is Hashem, and He's setting up the pieces. It's almost like humanity against Hashem. And so to the Jewish community, I would say this: hold on to hope, hold on to belief, and hold on to the idea that you are a people who were always chosen to be set apart. This is what Hashem will say to the children of Israel when they've gathered, in front of Mount Sinai, that they're going to be a holy people set apart for His good purposes. And so what we don't really understand about that is God is in a showdown with humanity and the wickedness of the world. And what's being exposed right now is how easy it is for humans to become wicked. Why are people buying into the lie? Why are people being convinced of a genocide and apartheid and supporting a radical Islamic ideology that wants to destroy everything, and happy to oppose the Jew who wants to live in peace and create a society like we have in Israel today? And so I would say this is a spiritual battle, and that's why so often anti-Semitism doesn't make sense. Because if you just look at it on the physical level, it's like illogical. Jewish people have done more for societies. I mean, when you think about the number of Nobel Peace Prize winners, the people who have contributed, what Israel's even doing today in terms of their cancer research, in terms of their development. I went out to Judea and Samaria recently to a area known as Dolev, and they've created an entire school and facility to help the most vulnerable in our society, women coming out of broken homes, coming out of broken family units, and they've created this whole community to help the most vulnerable. And I watch Israel constantly trying to create things to give back to the community they're in, even give back to the Palestinians. I mean, on Thursday I was in Rafah, and I watched the distribution of aid in coordination with the GHF and the IDF. I mean, it's incredible. What other nation feeds their enemy? And I know for a fact when 10,000 Palestinian men came to collect aid, within that crowd would have been those who support Hamas, those who fight for Hamas, those who are still showing allegiance to Hamas, but they're still collecting aid from the IDF and GHF. And this is unheard of. And yet, everything Israel does, they're accused of the greatest evil. They never get any credit for their good deeds. It's frustrating. And I can understand from a Jewish point of view why you would just be like, halas, I give up. Die, enough. But at the same time, you were the people who were given the greatest responsibility from God, which is to be a light to the nations.
Now, you mentioned your visit to Judea and Samaria. This is happening while more and more states are joining the initiative, the activity to support the establishment of a Palestinian state, basically a reward to terror, a reward for the October 7th massacre.
I'm Australian. The current Prime Minister of Australia, Albanese, is very anti-Israel. But this is what, people don't understand. During the Second Intifada, this Prime Minister was protesting and marching on behalf of Palestinians. During the Second Intifada, which was the most violent of the two intifadas. So Albanese, someone who is now the leader of Australia, it makes sense why he's anti-Israel, because he's always been anti-Israel. They want to reward terrorism, and that's a sad reality. But what it tells us is where we're at in the story with God. When we start celebrating what is evil as good and what is good as evil, we know that we're in a bad place in the world. And for me, from a biblical point of view, Hashem has a tolerance to wickedness, but it doesn't mean he's not going to act. It doesn't mean he's not going to respond. I mean, you go back to the story of Noah, and the wickedness of the world hit a point where Hashem said, enough is enough. Now I have to cleanse the earth. I have to fill it with water, and I have to do a redo of humanity because they've absolutely failed. We're going to do it again. And ironically, the word used in the Torah to describe this wickedness was Hamas. I mean, who would have thought that a terrorist organization that was born out of hatred is now being celebrated by governments around the world, and they're going to be rewarded with a state? Hamas must be laughing all the way to their future state, because they can say to each other, we lied and we convinced the world that we were the victims, even though we were the violent aggressors.
Now, Nate, this has been a very serious interview, but you're also enjoying your time here in Israel. You even participated in commercials on Israeli media. Would you say that being here is not only important, in terms of conveying the message, but it's also enjoyable, fun?
There's nowhere else in the world like Israel, and there's no people like Israelis. I mean, we're here in Tel Aviv right now. Just 50 meters from us is the beach. Look, I take my job very seriously, and I consider this a job, a holy task that I've been given, because I know that very few people would feel comfortable getting so much opposition and hatred and all kinds of false evil said about them on behalf of a people that are not their own. But at the same time, I just love how Israelis live. How even after the Islamic regime tried to, wipe Israel off the map with an unprecedented ballistic missile attack, a week and a half later, they're all back at the beach. They're all living their life. And it's a testament to the character and nature of Israelis. They are a people who want to just live and be happy. And so when you're around them, it's infectious. You can't help it. I dated an Israeli girl for 16 months. I have many, many fond memories of that relationship, and it was something that I'll take with me, I think, for the rest of my days. I've fallen in love with the entire nation of Israel, and it's something that I think will always be a part of me. Maybe one day potentially I'll even move here, because I feel like as the world gets darker and darker, I want to be in a place where there's the most light, and I feel that here in Israel with the people, whether it's in Jerusalem, Samaria, or on a beach watching a sunset in Tel Aviv.
Nate, how would you answer Israelis who tell you, Nate, enough. There's no reason to put so much effort. It's a lost cause. Even our sages tell us that they will always hate us. Esav soneh leYaakov. The world hates us. Nate, enjoy your time. Have fun. There's no reason to be part of this struggle so much. It's a lost cause.
I would say this is exactly what the Palestinians want you to do. The second you stop advocating, the second you stop speaking up for the truth, the Palestinians have you exactly where they want you. When you stop speaking, you give them complete free reign of the entire narrative. And their ultimate goal is to vilify you enough so that the next October 7th, it wouldn't be a moment of shock from the world, but it would be a celebration from the world. And the world will say the Jews got what they deserved. This is why it's so important to speak. And even if we can change one person at a time, or be a testimony of truth in 20, 30 years from now, that there were people who were speaking the truth and sharing the truth, and that was documented so future generations can realize and understand that this was just another example of an attempted Holocaust against the Jewish identity. It's tiring, it's exhausting, but the most important thing is to keep fighting. fighting for the right thing, fighting for justice, and fighting for righteousness. And this is what we've been called to do. So don't give up. Don't think that I'm just not bothered, I'm never going to be able to convince anyone, because you never know when you can turn an enemy into a friend. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned that Israelis need to learn how to do, particularly the government in a lot of areas with their Hasbara, is they need to start speaking to people's hearts, not their minds. That's why the Palestinians are so successful. They go straight for the heart. They don't really care about the mind, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't have facts on their side. We have the truth, we have the facts, but we have to start speaking to people's hearts. And I think that's really, really important. So instead of putting up a brave face and a tough shell and say, forget about it, I don't care about the world, I'm Israeli, whatever, I don't care. No, keep speaking to people. Keep being patient, and most importantly, keep believing that one day, just as God said, he's going to vindicate this nation. It's in Isaiah 54. It's a really, really famous verse that a lot of Christians like to quote, because the verse says, no weapon formed against you will prosper. But it also says that every tongue that comes to accuse you will face judgment, and it'll be God who vindicates you. Now, God is speaking to the nation of Israel, and what he's ultimately saying is the world is going to come and try and destroy you. The world is going to come and accuse you of all kinds of false evils, but ultimately I'm going to be the one that vindicates you. It's a declaration of Adonai. And so we need to remember those words, and we need to say, he is going to vindicate this nation. But in the interim between that period of time and the day that he comes to judge the nations for the false things they've said about you, you still have to live righteously. You still have to live in a holy place where you're saying the work that I'm doing is good, it's holy, and it's truth, and that's what matters. Some days I wake up and I've struggled with this. I've taken on a lot of people's pain, a lot of pain. And sometimes it's very difficult for me to find a purpose to live. It's heavy, it's hard. I've met mothers who have lost sons in Gaza. I've met soldiers who have lost their best friends fighting next to them. I've met survivors of the Nova Festival. I have taken on people's pain on an extreme level for the last 22 months. And sometimes I even ask myself the question, why am I living? It's heavy, it's hard, I'm in darkness. And what I realize is if you can't find a purpose to live, find a people to love and love them unconditionally. That's what Israelis need to do. Find the reason to love, whether it's your community, whether it's the communities on the outside, whether it's patiently waiting for people to see the truth of this reality. Find a reason to love.
Okay, Nate, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for all your activity.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.